Okie dokes, as promised, we are now going to color in this epic device. So what you need to decide is look and feel of your map. I will show you how I do mine, and you can decide whether or not it is for you. I work on a three-tone kind of basis, and all my colors are always done in a different layer. So let's get started. To make the ocean, I start very dark, and you just fill it blue. Good. So there's our water. And if I turn on our continent, we can see stuff all. Firstly, let's get rid of these grid lines. Dump. Turn off the water and come back to our continents. Now we're going to do the same thing. We're going to select the entire continent, create a new layer, put it underneath the continent. And this time we're going to press Control-Shift-I, and that inverts the mask. And that allows us to go to, let's say, a dark kind of green. And we're going to use this as our base color for our land. Because I did not close off this island. And normally it would be closed off. So I come back here and just do that. So that I can select this and fill it green without any problems. Now when I turn my water back on, we have the very beginnings of a map. And if I turn on my mountains, you can see, we can see sweet nothing. Now, water I usually work on last because it's the least interesting. So, let's go to our mountains, create a new layer, put it underneath the mountain. You can call it mountain color if you like. And I would suggest that each layer gets its own color layer, for the very simple reason that it allows you the greatest amount of control. You can go in and say, I don't like that particular color for mountains or whatever the case might be. I want it to be a slightly darker shade, and then you don't have to change every layer at the same time. So I have selected a very dark gray, and I'm going to very roughly, not even paying too much attention to my outline, just color in a flat gray. And if it goes over a little bit, well, the cartographer just got lazy and didn't draw the mountain in. And we can always fix it later. So there's a bit of mountain there. Just by the way, I hold down the space bar to allow me to navigate around the map quite quickly. Okay, so there are the mountains. Now, this is the process I use. I then just go straight back to the color I was using, find half its darkness, and then do a second round where I just kind of haven't changed my brush size, because the idea is to get tone. There are people who will go in and paint each face of the mountain sunward facing and then shadow facing. Sure, go ahead and do that. Again, it's how much time you want to take. If you're running a long form campaign like the one Bacon RPG that I run, I spent several days on the map and, making sure that it was as pretty as I needed it to be. Incidentally, on that map, I used Illustrator to create the initial image because I had always planned on printing it out to be 6 foot by 5 foot in size. So I knew my printer was going to ask for vector based. I did it as a vector, and it was quite a big file. Alright, so second layer done, and now we go again, halftone in, and you'll see what we do just now to bring it all together. Okay, I'm going to put in some snow now, and that's just a case of, don't think there'd be any snow on a volcano. I'm not convinced. See how it just sort of makes it pop out. Not all mountain ranges are equal. So you might not have snow across the board. That little peak won't have any for certain. This is the jungle area, so I doubt there'd be any snow there. And this is a really tall kind of peak. We'll leave it there. So that's our mountains. Very, very simple. Now let's turn on pine forests. Pine forests get the same kind of treatment. We create a new layer. We call it pine color. Okay. And you'll notice that I haven't touched the green, and there's a reason for that. The green gets a different treatment once it's filled up. Now pine forests I always think of pine forests as being almost blue. So I'm going to use this blue here to color in my pine forest. Again, don't really care about the outline because we'll just use our selection tool on the continent's shape and then cut it out. So here where the forest kind of overlaps the mountain, doesn't bother me. The forest would change the color of the mountain as it grows along its slopes. So same procedure as last year. And again, we just take half sort of tones so there's a significant visual difference between the base tone and the second coat. And obviously I've made my brush size slightly larger to compensate so that it goes fairly quickly. Now we've got this dead forest here, and I think I'm going to want to give it a different color, although I will still put it in the layer of pine forests. There we go. And then finally halftone, and again the halftone we want to use it sparingly just to make the forest kind of pop out. We don't want to be too heavy-handed. There we go. And there really is no art to this. This is just mucking about. Alright, so those dead trees, I'm going to apply the same thing, go back to where I was, but I'm going to make it more of a grey kind of color so that the players can really see that it's an infested kind of area and use the same sort of principles. Although I suppose there's no foliage. But that looks good enough. So that's kind of what we're looking like at the moment. Let's turn that blue back on again. Oh, quite striking and quite hideous, really, as well. We really don't have much control at the moment. Let's bring our oak forests in. New layer. Under the oak forest. And we call this oak forest color. Now, you will need a fairly decent computer, but gone are the days of the computers I grew up with. This image at the moment is 351 megabytes, so not that big in relative terms. Right, so the forest we want it to be a temperate forest, so I'm going for, say, that color. There, a dark color. And as I thought, we can very barely see it on our green of our continent. So this is what I was talking about in terms of being able to control each layer's color, because literally I can go to my continental map, color, go to adjustments, go to hue saturation, and change the color of my landmass to kind of whatever I want it to be, whether I want it to be darker or greener or more saturated. Do I want a brighter green? Maybe we go for something like that, really pump this up. Something like that, maybe? Does that look like grass? Well, I don't know. But it allows us to control very finely each layer's color. And as you color in, being the mature adult that you are, as you color in, you will realize, like myself, that you've been coloring in on the grass map. Oops. Okay, I think we're all right. So remember to check that. As you color in, you might decide that you want the grass to be slightly greener or slightly duller, or maybe not so green, or you want the forests to be a darker color or a lighter color. You then have that control. So I always work on separate layers until the very end, and even then I try and keep them separate for as long as possible. This is phase 1 of the coloring project. Phase 2 is where it actually starts to look pretty damn nice. Phase 1, it still looks very much like a 12-year-old kind of executed it. So have faith, it will improve. Trust me. I'm a GM. Whilst you're colouring in, if you're not listening to music or singing or watching a TV show, hopefully not, you can start to look at territories and go, well, I wonder who lives there and why would they live there? Why wouldn't they live somewhere else? Why didn't they move if it's such a nasty place, or whatever the case might be? At least that's certainly what I look at. I look at the little shapes and go, oh, look, I think there could be a something happening there, and you can go back to your little towns and castles and things that you placed and quite happily just move them, because you are who you are. And if they're not up to snuff because they don't make sense anymore, well, damn it, Jim, just do it. One thing I've never tried is to make a map in autumn. And I'm not sure it's a very good idea to do it in any other season other than when all the trees are green. Simply because it could be a bit of a confusing map. Why is the forest on fire? Why are the grasslands brown? Is it all just a wasteland? So, but if you want to give it a shot, go for it, and let's have a look and see what the reaction is of the players. Because ultimately, this is a tool for you to use in terms of storytelling. In terms of the players, it's a very valuable tool to get them into the territory, into the land that they're playing in. And that becomes very important. It's all about immersion, isn't it? So that's oak forest. Jungle shouldn't take us very long at all. One thing we don't have on here is any deserts. Deserts are very easy to do, again, in my opinion, because they're just big sand dunes. And if you really, really, really want, I can show you how to draw sand dunes. But remember, it was all about enough of a visual cue for you to understand what's going on, and for a potential person to look at and go, oh, okay, Well, it's a big yellow tract. It must be either lots of sand or a desert. Or someone went mad and painted the grass yellow. But that's not likely. There have been several requests to do a star map, and I'm happy to do that. It's a different process altogether. There's very little drawing involved, but you'll see that when we get there. So you can see that although I've tried to make this process as quick as possible, it's not always. It is just a function of being methodical, going about it, accepting that it is what it is. It is the process of coloring. And if you notice, the color choices are not hard to make. You just the initial color choice is the trick, and then you just halve it every time, going upwards. For those of you that are not artists, this is a process that does not require any art, in my opinion. It's simply just a case of choosing the closest color to jungle and coloring in according to that. Incidentally, this is the same process that if you were painting oils, you would use dark to light. Start with the darkest parts and then slowly work light on top of it. If you paint Warhammer models, you do the same thing. You start dark, and then you work the tones, you work the lighter bits up. Okay, so there's the majority of our foliage done. Lakes. So this is the only time that I change the brush size, because we want to go over the river but not flood too far over. And rivers, you can usually use a blue that just makes it stand out. You can choose subtle or not so subtle. It doesn't really matter. Could argue that there should be a swamp here. There's nothing stopping you from going back and adding in more stuff. But the critical part is about making a decision on basic geography and then just getting it down. The most difficult part sometimes is just starting. The other thing is, and I hope this is an example of it, this map does not look very good at the moment. It's very crude, very rough. The colors are very, very simple kind of tone colors. It really does look like a bit of a dog's breakfast. That's fine. We will fix that shortly. Absolutely shortly. Okay, so for a lake, we're going to do exactly what we did before. I'm just going to make my brush a little bit bigger so I don't spend 4 days filling in my lake. You constantly want to zoom in and out when doing this. If you're not zooming in and out, you're not checking enough. Because it's also a visual project, and that's where you could argue the art comes in, is in making sure that this looks visually nice. And maybe these rivers need to be a different color. Maybe the lakes need to be a different color. I don't know. That's something to be decided upon by you, the creator. And I realize that with lakes, it should be a lighter color first and then a darker color. But I don't know, this sometimes seems to just look more like a lake. I think it's just consistent with what's been done before. How the rest of the mountains and the rest of the trees and things are done. No one's complained yet that the lake is technically shallower at the center than at the edges. Could be a feature of the world, actually. Okay, so there are lakes dropped in. Swamps can be tricky. But again, it's just about choosing the color that you think sort of best represents sludge and grime and a nasty kind of place to have to visit. Now the beauty here is that we can take the lake color and put it above the swamp, and then our river pops out quite nicely. So, you know, and then we've moved the lake layer up as well and all that kind of stuff. So it really does give us power to just look at different layer colors and go, well, we want the river detail is too high, it's too thin to paint around, so we'll just paint over it and then just move it up a layer. I see we missed a mountain there. Where is the other swamp? Down there, and that's it. If you have a good memory of your map, you can kind of zoop around and just find what you need. But always zoom out and check, because sometimes you forget that you have another little swamp somewhere tucked away for later use. So here it's not so much about solid color as just sort of making sure that it looks kind of manky. No more swamps. Glacier. What color is a glacier? It's an interesting question. But to me, glaciers are a very cold kind of blue. And because it's got a nice hard edge, we can just paint to our heart's content, because the computer will do all the cleaning up for us. I'll show you exactly how we'll do that if you're using another program, if you're not using Photoshop. Unless you're using Windows Paint, which I sincerely hope you're not. Although I taught myself how to use how to generate art on computers using Windows Paint. That was many years ago. Most programs will have a mask selection tool or a selection device that will allow you to do what I'm about to show you. As soon as I finished coloring in this gigantic glacier, I'm just being lazy. I should have selected a bigger tool once I got to the middle. But now here I can already see this is too, to me it doesn't feel like ice. It feels more like rock. And this might help, but this doesn't really look like much. So I can come here, go to my adjustments, adjust my hue, make it, oh there we go, that's looking better. Pump up the blue a little bit. There we go, I think that looks better. So the selection tool, what you do is you go to the glacier layer, you select the area outside the glacier layer, you come back to the glacier color and you press delete, and bingo, it's cut it out nice and neat for you. We'll use the same technique with the lakes to clean it up. Okay, castles. Now I kind of cheated because castles you want to actually color in first before you spread them all over the map. Because for your castles, you come in and you can really have fun painting them up. And you do want to do just one castle and duplicate it multiple times, because otherwise you will go insane trying to paint these silly little things, because they really are small in detail. So I'm going to paint it one color of grey just to begin with. Change my brush size just a little bit. Top there. Okay, so that's one tone of grey. Here's the second tone. I'm going to paint almost just a few bits and pieces of colour in there, and then we want to paint the roof. I think it should have a nice red roof, something like that. Okay, and the drawbridge area needs to be dark, so you can see it goes inside. The drawbridge needs to be brown. So we get a sense that it's a drawbridge, and then the flag can be a nice sort of orange color, so that it really kind of stands out. Maybe I'll come and give this in terms of color. So there is our city, master city, if you like, and we'll go around and we'll paint all of those in and carry on as usual. Same with our towns, we'll do the same thing there. So what I want to do now is come back to this layer, our land layer, and make quite a big brush, because once you've kind of painted everything else in, you now have a sense of this very flat green. So what we're going to do is we'll actually just sample this green and get that color there, and we're going to choose a tone up from it, which will then come in. Again, I don't have to worry too much about following the lines, and I'm just going to break up very roughly that dark green. The last layer that we're going to do is a sort of yellow layer. I'll do just the edging around that, just very roughly. Right, and again we're going to use that trick of select the continent, come back here, and clean it up for us. And look at that, nice and clean. What you can do, oops, no, we don't do that. What you can do, if you like, is if you feel that you haven't got really enough depth happening, you can choose the color again and kind of do shadowing, if you get my meaning, around some of the larger structures. If you kind of feel that your green is too green, how green is your green? And that's entirely up to you. You get to choose on that one. Okay. Oh, computer says no. So select the whole area, delete it so it's nice and clean. Okay, we had to clean our rivers too, I believe. So let's come here and select around it, select our lake color, clean that up. And we wanted to move rivers and lakes up anyway, so they stuck out over virtually everything. That's looking pretty good. Okay, so could not use the magic wand. Then finally, and it is finally, we now have to worry about our water. And our water layer, I didn't lay in that actually, water is the opposite process here. Select it, go in, select a half tone. It's not too purple. I'm going to select a bigger brush now. Just do that. Just filling in areas that would be shallower than the surrounds. Very quick. Okay, and then half turn it again. Make it a little bit bluer. And come in. This time going a bit closer to the coast as things get shallower. Still pretty rough. Don't need to be very specific. Okay, fill that in there. And then one more tone to give you a sense of coast. And shallower waters. Again, it's up to you how big a brush you want to use, how much you want to go in, whether you want to have shallower waters or not. It's really up to you. But this is just a demonstration anyway of what to look out for. Okay, so there's our map. It still looks rather dull in my opinion. It still doesn't look 100%. And once you are happy with the colors, and you have to be ecstatic with the colors, by the way, you then want to join them all together. And in our next video, you'll see why.